I believe in God because as I was growing up as a child, I came to the conclusion that there was no God, or that if there was a God, that He basically didn't care about my life, or anybody's life. And a lot of what I went through in my childhood growing up convinced me that there probably was not a God, and if He was again, that He didn't care whether one thing worked one way or the other. When I came to a point in my life, my wife and I were going through a divorce, and I was looking at myself and seeing what it is that was happening, why it was happening, and I started questioning myself as who I was as far as my relationship with not only them but why I existed. I mean, why was I here? And like any other person, every human being at one time or another asked themselves that same question. In my case, I needed to find an answer that worked, something that was real and not just what I was always told. What I was told in school was that we were basically accidents, some kind of a something grew up in the ocean, and that thing turned into some other thing, and then eventually that turned into some other thing, and then it turned into some kind of fish with legs or whatever, and then it crawled up under the ground, and then developed bigger legs and turned into a monkey, and then that somehow or other the monkeys turned into humans, and that, well, there we are, something of that. That's what I basically remember through growing up. And so basically what we were being told in my mind was that we're just accidents. It's just an accident. We're just an accident that we happened to develop the way we did. And so, there is no purpose, no reason for life. You're here, and you make the best of it that you can. And when you die, well, you're gone. That's it. Things are over. And I would look at that, and most of my life, as I said, I accepted it. I did not argue with it because, well, scientists never lie, right? They always tell us the truth. But at that point, when I was going through the divorce with my wife and I was about to lose my family and everything, I looked at myself and I asked myself, what's wrong? What's going on? And why this situation? And one thing that I learned throughout my life was to question things. I have always questioned everything. And sometimes it got me in trouble because it sounded like a rebellious person. And well, why do I have to do this? Why is that got to be that way, and so forth? Well, when it came to this point, I also had the same question: why am I here? Why is it that my life was at the point that it was? And I started recognizing rather, that I had done a lot of wrong in my life. I made a lot of bad decisions, and so I had basically ruined my own life. I did the wrong things. But along with that, I asked myself, is it possible to change? I had heard rather that other people would, on TV, and especially angry people, they'll say, no, that person will never change. Once you're like that, you're always going to be like that, no matter what. And so that, people never change. And I didn't argue with that. I figured that was true. If you're a certain way, you'll be that way the rest of your life. That's it. But I still asked the question, and the answers I was getting were not working. The things that I was being told were not working. I started challenging things in my life. I started challenging things as far as, like, is that the way they're supposed to be? Is that the way they are? Period. That's it. And then I would find out that things were not that way. That in many cases we were told that something was a certain way, and some of it was true, some of it was not. And when I started looking at the things that were not true, I started asking myself, what else do I not know? What else is it that I'm not understanding? And there were things like, is the world round? There are some people who say they believe in flat Earth, and some who believe in round Earth. I don't care one way or the other. But it's a good question. I've never been up in any spaceship. I don't know what it looks like. And for me, just to believe somebody showing me a picture or telling me that it's round. Well, I'm pretty good at Photoshop. I can do a lot with Photoshop. And so just showing me a picture doesn't convince me at all. And CG, I mean, somebody says, well, look, this is the Earth spinning. Well, I mean, I've seen movies where the Earth spinning in the background and it looks pretty real, but we all know it's fake because it's a movie. So just because somebody shows me something doesn't prove it, anything. As compared to somebody telling me, the scientists say that this is true and that's true about the Earth, for example, and well, I don't know that they're telling me the truth, because I've had people tell me that the Bible is a lie because some men wrote it, and well, science is written by men, and so what's the difference? If one lied, the other lied, right? And so to me, it was not just what is it that I was told, but the question is, what can I prove? And I started on a journey identifying the things that I could prove, and those things that I could prove helped me to understand the things I could not prove. Like, for example, I cannot prove that God is real to you. I can't prove to you that God is real, but I can prove that God is real to me. And the reason that that's true is because it depends on the evidence. If you accept certain things as evidence, then those things that line up with the evidence that you accept, well, that's going to convince you of the truth. Just like me. If certain things line up according to the evidence that I will accept, then that'll prove to me that what I'm believing is true to the best of my mind and best of my understanding. That's true of every single human being, no matter what anybody says. If a person tells you that this evidence is better than another evidence, it's because they're saying that they will accept that evidence over the other. That's all that they're saying. But they won't say that. They'll tell you that that evidence is empirical, it's real, it's so forth, but that the other evidence is not. We're told that the Earth spins at 1,000 miles an hour or so, and I look outside and I look up in the sky and I don't see any movement. Now, does that prove it's not moving? No. But does that prove it is? No. It proves nothing in terms of either side. All it proves is that the clouds are moving a little slowly, birds fly around, planes are up there, and nothing seems to be moving, and that's all it seems to be. Is that proof? It's evidence. The question is that evidence something that I would accept? Is that enough? So when it comes to God, the closest thing that I can imagine in terms of understanding why I believe in God is because of something that the scientists themselves did. They use a system called inference, where they identify certain things about a particular thing that they can identify, that they can, in a sense, prove. And then that evidence that they have leads them to figure something else that cannot be proven, cannot be seen. An example of that would be a black hole. The scientists say, because they never lie, right? The scientists say that at the center of the galaxy, there's this place or this area where the galaxy spins in a circuit like a drain, water going down a drain, and in the middle of all of this place, all of these stars and everything is falling into it, but on the other side, they're going nowhere. So they're going like, where are they going to? And I'm sure that some scientists said, well, they're falling into a black hole, and so they named it a black hole. They say that there's no proof that a black hole exists other than through inference. The circular motion of the galaxy, the stars colliding into the space that is disappeared, and so they say that the black hole exists because of the evidence. Understand that? They can't prove the black hole, but they can show you the evidence. When it comes to God, what I do is I look for the evidence. Now, somebody will say, well, that evidence doesn't work. Well, to them, because that's not evidence that they would accept. But to me, it is evidence that I would accept, so that proves God to me. One of the things that I would use as evidence in the terms of whether God is real or not is His own word. Overall, but like most people or many people who disagree with the Bible, I can find some things that, as an intelligent, educated man, that I find problem with the Bible. There are some things that were written in the English that are not the same as they were written in the Greek or the Aramaic or the Hebrew. So that in the English they seem to say or imply or whatever something that is not correct or not the intended interpretation or translation. So that in the English there are some errors, there are some problems with the way that it's written, and I myself personally have found some that I looked at and said, wow, that's not okay. But because I can see that it's the interpretation, the translation that was made. And so if I were to look at it that way, I would say, yeah, there are errors in the Bible. And secondly, if I were to look at some of the evidences as far as historical, the scientists or the historians will tell us that certain things are true in history relating to biblical times. Sometimes those things differ than what is mentioned in the Bible, and so they say or imply rather that the evidence or that the historical evidence given through the Bible is incorrect. So that means that the Bible is incorrect, and I look at that and I can say, yeah, I can see some differences in terms of what one man said, a historian, as compared to what another man said, meaning a writer from the Bible, right? Two different men wrote two different things, and they have two different evidences. That still doesn't prove that both of them are right, one is right, one's wrong, or that neither one is wrong. All it means is that they differ on those things. I don't know that the evidence that the historians gave were all correct either. I've done some studying myself in historical things. For example, David Crockett is one of my favorites, and I went back and I did a study on David Crockett in his own book, His Adventures in Texas, and he admits in there that he did a lot of things that were not okay, that historians will tell us were differently, but he himself says differently. So I decided to believe his own words out of his own book compared to another historian who says something different. So the same thing with the Bible. The Bible has some things in it that are errors, some problem areas that are there, but because of the English, not because the Bible is an error, not because the Bible has something wrong with it. It's the translation or the interpretation. And one more thing, and that is that the evidences that are provided by people who disagree with the Bible tend to focus on the dates and who wrote them and discrepancies here and there and so forth. But what they don't do, and I have not yet read any author who is anti-Bible, for example, that I've read, who has made a good argument in this one point, and that is the teachings of the Bible. The Bible gives us teachings, principles to apply, that these principles either work or they don't work. And there's where I look at the evidence. To me, it's not that if these men wrote the Bible or whether monkeys wrote the Bible. I don't care if a snail wrote the Bible. The question is the teaching real? Is this really the Word of God, that if we apply it in our lives, if we apply it in our everyday circumstances, will it work? I don't care who wrote it. The question is, will it work? And so what I did, I started testing out the evidence. I started applying those evidences, or those principles rather, in my life, and to see what the outcome was going to be. I both wanted them to work, and on the other hand, I really did want to test it out. In Malachi, the Lord says, "Test me in this and see if I don't." And so I decided to test him. In another part of the Bible, he says, "Test every spirit to see if it's from God or not." So I test every spirit. I use the evidences that I have to use. I don't use other people's evidences because, well, they won't convince me. But I use the evidences that are either going to convince me that it works, or that will convince me that they don't work. I'm not trying to prove the Bible. The Bible will either prove itself or it won't. And in my case, I'm willing to accept the evidences that the Bible provides, not just make up my own evidences and then try to make the Bible follow my evidences, which is what a lot of people do. I think that everybody needs to decide the validity or the reality of God on their own, to understand that this is not a project where we try to convince the world that He exists. The one that we have to convince or not convince is ourselves. If we can make that our goal, our project, then we're going to succeed at one way or the other. You'll either convince yourself that God is real, or you'll convince yourself that He's not. And either way, that's where it really stands. If everybody stops trying to convince everybody else that God exists, or convince everybody that God does not exist, either way, then they will do better as far as succeeding in terms of what they want to accomplish, or what I hope they want to accomplish. The goal to me is for each person to decide that God is real or that He's not. And if He is real, then to ask yourself, what do I do with this God if He's real? If He's not real, who cares? You know, I don't. When people read Alice in Wonderland, I don't get upset. I don't go through changes. If somebody wants to read or believe a certain way, I don't care. You know, it just when they start deciding that I have to believe their way, not that it's an option, but that I have to believe their way, well, then that's a problem. When with Christians, at least the branch that I'm from, but you know, the believers in God, you know, the those of us who have a relationship with Jesus Christ, not the religion, Christianity, but the relationship with the Lord. Our attitude's a little bit different. You know, we would like you to come to know Christ as your Savior. We believe it's the best thing. We believe in heaven. We believe it's a good place, and we believe that you would want to be there if you actually believed in it. But on the other hand, you know, everybody has a right to go to hell, but nobody has a right to go to heaven. Going to heaven is a privilege. It's something that God lets us have as a free gift. But going to hell is a right. You can go to hell, you know, if you want to, without, you know, we don't have to listen to no God. We don't have to follow no God. We don't have to believe in anything. We can just decide, live our own way, and you know. And when I say go to hell, I don't mean hell like in hell. I mean like a person can just decide they can live their life the way they want to, and when they die, there's no God anyway. They'll just disappear. They'll go into nothing. Boom, disappear. Poof, gone. Right? Because they don't believe in God anyway, so there's no hell, so nothing to worry about. But for those of us who do believe in God, we also believe in hell, and I would not want somebody to go to hell. I would want somebody to go to heaven. And I believe that it's real. I believe that it's really real. So it's like we're all drowning in an ocean, and I get a hold of one of those floating things, you know. And why wouldn't I want to give that floating thing to somebody else? They may not want it, but I would want to give it to them. So that's what I do. And so to me, to identify who is God, what He's about, is He real or not, and more important than everything, even if there's a God, does His Bible really work? Does His Word really work? And I don't take other people's word for it. I don't care if somebody tells me that it worked for them or not. It doesn't matter to me. The question is, did it work for me at the time? When I applied those principles, did they work for me? And if they did, good. If they didn't, then the Bible's just a worthless piece of paper. But God is real. I have been able to prove that, and I'm looking for that, you know, for the future.